Here at Pure Generators, I love talking about all the most magical and positive things about being a generator or manifesting generator. But today I want to talk about the more challenging or negative sides to the deconditioning process and to actually becoming your true self as you honor your inner authority. Because it is not all easy. It is not all fun. It is not all rewarding. It is not that suddenly when you start to live this lifestyle, everything lines up for you, because actually a lot of times at points, and especially at the beginning, it can feel like the opposite. So today I'm going to cover some of the more negative things that can happen as you decondition, as you become more of your true self, just so that you know you're not alone on this journey when you experience these things. So the first thing is that when you begin to decondition as a generator or MG, honestly, most of this applies to everybody. But as usual, I'm going to be speaking specifically to generators and MGs today, which is that we can lose the skills that we developed in order to survive. Because a lot of these things were conditioning. I started to notice this in the first few years of my deconditioning process. I was like, how did I ever used to go to this job that I really didn't like and spend my whole day with people and lead these meetings and do all these things that now to me feel really uncomfortable, really unnatural, and honestly, I just could not put up with that again, probably. And the simple fact is that these were skills that I learned to survive. I learned to be more extroverted. I learned to deal with a lot of difficult people and a lot of personalities every day. I learned to kind of shut off my energy to stop myself from absorbing all of that so that I could just get through the day. I learned a lot of bullshitting, basically. I was much better at not paying attention to the truth or not caring so much about the truth and really more caring about perception, which is not at all the case now. For me, the truth is a very central and important thing to my life. But these were all things that I learned to do back then because they helped me survive in capitalism. They helped me find acceptance in society, and they helped me do the job that I was tasked to do. And I wanted to do that job because I wanted money so that I could live my life and feel free and pursue my passion. So there were reasons that we developed these things. And some of the characteristics that we find falling away as we decondition aren't even inherently negative things, and they're not even really skills we were using to survive. They're just things we picked up from our environments or our families. So for instance, I grew up in a family of almost completely fourth line people, and I continue to live with all fourth line people. All the most important, closest people in my life are fourth lines. I'm pretty much the only one who isn't. And so that meant I really got conditioned to prioritize relationships and connections and that sharing of resources above all else. I can also say that at points I knew that didn't come completely naturally to me. I knew there was something in me that kind of hungered for this more introspective, independent path, which makes sense because I am a 1-3 profile. But I also got to spend decades with incredible friends and family and this really extended network that I put a lot of time and energy into. And there was something incredibly beautiful about that. I was surrounded by friends all the time, everywhere I went. If I was traveling, I was in email communication, phone. I just had these really strong networks. As I began my deconditioning process, a lot of that fell away. I just felt like I can't quite put my energy into these things in the same way, into groups of friends, things like that. So it's not that I haven't maintained connections. I still do have a lot of friends, but it's not sort of my primary role in society anymore. And that was actually really difficult to release because not only did I receive a lot of social support and acceptance for being that way, because fourth lines kind of keep society and communities going, but there were some really beautiful things about it in my life too. And accepting that it actually feels much more correct and purposeful for me to create a lot of space for my own introspection and experiments and not be relying so much on my connections to be helping me grow has felt really rewarding. But it's also been challenging. So yeah, there can be some really positive traits or societally rewarded traits that we pick up. It can be if you're a really creative and free-thinking person, you learn to be more focused and strategic. That's super common. You might learn public speaking. You might learn to sit still. You might learn to just not question authority. You might learn to just adapt to a schedule of getting up really early in the morning, spending your whole day out of your house, and then coming home at the end of the day and not having that much private time to yourself. yourself. We learn that logic trumps our intuition or what our bodies are telling us. We learn not to question authority, and we learn how to push through and complete things that really don't energize us. So these were all skills that helped me survive in capitalism. But once I deconditioned and I found my way into environments and opportunities that didn't really require these things of me, I've kind of lost them. And at first it was kind of scary. Now I don't really think about these things anymore. We're like 6 years into this process. But the first few years it was very scary because I was like, wait, I used to just be able to push through this. Oh, I used to just be able to like not think about that, not think about the truth, not think about what that person's doing. I used to be able to force myself to be extroverted, to make small talk, to do all these things. And now a lot of that's fallen away. So it can feel weird when it first happens. It's really a sign that you're doing a good job deconditioning, but it can also just feel bad. Another thing that can happen as you decondition is that you realize that maybe a path that's been put out before you is not something you actually want to pursue anymore. And you realize, wow, the whole world is actually open to me. There's all of these possibilities, and that can feel like a positive thing in a way, but it can also feel really scary. And what you thought you might do or what you expected to do with your life may be something completely different. And that can just be really hard for your mind. So without being able to project into the future in this way, sometimes you can feel less stable. Like, I can't predict what I'm going to do. I can't predict where I'm going to go. I can't commit to something for this long. A lot of this will vary based on your design and whatever the thing is. It doesn't mean that you can never commit to anything. And it doesn't mean that you're just at the whim of this completely unpredictable, strange mechanism inside of you that's going to ruin your life. That's what I thought when I first discovered human design and started to really tap into my sacral. It's not like that at all, but there's going to be less predictability. In the end, everything that you end up doing will probably make sense in its own way and you'll begin to trust it. But at least at first, it can feel scary as that path that you expected to follow falls away and you're not really sure where you're going. Another thing that can happen is that as you reclaim your inner authority, basically you take your decision making away from all these things out here. Your boss, your family, the government, your spouse, your friends. Recently, I've been reading a lot of old G-chats from like 12, 15 years ago, these conversations I had with my friends. And I realized that I relied on them a lot sort of as an authority for me. I was taking cues from them. I was asking them what I should do in certain situations. And I just don't do that anymore because as you decondition, you're always tapping into what's inside of you. What's your perception? You can start to question yourself because you can't really question all these things out here anymore. You can't be like, oh, well, that's not stable anymore. I'll just go here and I'll listen to this. Or you can't question that authority. Instead, you start to maybe like question yourself. I'd say this gets better as you go along the path and it becomes less and less. I don't question myself all that often anymore, but it's definitely something that happens as part of the deconditioning process. It can feel really bad. It can feel really destabilizing. And while the point of all this deconditioning is that eventually you don't really question yourself so much because you're so tapped in, it's normal as you begin to do that to question yourself, especially when maybe you're not seeing exactly the results that you thought you would get from taking certain actions that felt right in that moment. As you decondition, your relationships can change too. I have lost a lot of friendships, and it can be harder to go along with the pack, which can be isolating. This has absolutely been one of my biggest wounds on this journey, is feeling like, oh, well, I guess just because I'm not doing that, I don't have this same type of belonging with these people anymore who are all sharing this one experience. Maybe you're making some decision that is just very different from the people around you. So it can lead you to start to feel a little bit isolated. At the same time, you can't just go with the pack. You can't just go with the majority. You can't just go with the flow. There may be friendships that you find have to end because your threshold for a mismatch in frequency becomes much smaller, especially if you have a third line in your profile. That's super common for those of us who have that. I can barely deal with any misalignment anymore. If something is bringing a misaligned energy into my life consistently, I have to let it go. Even if there were some benefits to that friendship, I really cared about that person, I really liked going that place, I really liked being part of that thing. If I start to feel that no, that sacral no, I have to release it. And so sometimes that does leave you walking walking the path alone for a little while or with fewer people around you than before. So it can be a little bit isolating. You can end up losing certain relationships. But what you get in return is that you're living a life that is actually yours. It's something that feels true to you. It feels purposeful and right at the end of the day. And it's okay to grieve those losses. I never expected there to be so much grief on this journey, not only of people, but also of things I built, things I've created, moving on to new things, letting go of things that I put a lot of time and energy and effort into. So as you decondition, you're changing so much, especially in these first 7 years. You're changing so rapidly that there can be a lot of grief about the things that you have to let go along the way. You can never predict exactly how these things are going to go, but you just have to trust where your inner authority is at that moment and make the best decision that you can, because these energy leaks will become so much more uncomfortable as you really connect to your inner authority and live your design. Kind of in this same vein, I've noticed a lot more rejection from people around me, social rejection or rejection of different types, because I've noticed that I now bring like 99% of myself, my true self, into any given situation. I even noticed a few weeks ago when I had a meeting with someone where usually I would have approached it in a much different way, like maybe more like a job interview. And I started to realize like, oh, I don't play that role anymore. I don't play those games. I'm 100% honest about myself, my likes and dislikes, my personality, what I need to know out of this opportunity, what I need to know about the other person. I'm coming at it not from this place of trying to like earn something or to prove myself, instead from just being my true self. And while we're told that that's rewarded, and it is, because in the end, you're going to find the right people and the right opportunities by being that way, it can also lead to some short-term rejection, because not everybody is going to either like that version of you or understand it. And I think all of us would like to hope that once we finally show our true selves to the world, all of a sudden we're welcomed with open arms and all these people are so happy that we're there. And honestly, it can kind of be the opposite sometimes. Some people might not know exactly what to do with you. They might feel repelled by you. They might feel extra attracted to you, because when you're showing up in your true self and you're not just like molding to the situation or people pleasing, or that can still be repelling to the wrong people. So for me, even though I feel like I have quite a soft aura, I'm a generator, I have a lot of Virgo energy, I've got a Scorpio rising, so I think that can be kind of intense for people, but I feel like generally I have quite like gentle energy. I'm noticing more rejection from people that aren't really meant to be part of my story. And the last one we'll talk about today is that just because you're deconditioning and just because you're living as your true self and you're making decisions with your inner authority most of the time does not mean that you necessarily see the results in the outer world. I think this is absolutely possible for everybody eventually, but there's a lot of things that can prevent us from maybe experiencing exactly the things that we expected. Maybe we think like, oh, I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to find this other thing. And that doesn't quite pan out exactly, even though it was a sacral yes. Or you think, oh, suddenly I'm going to pursue this thing and I'm going to make this happen. It doesn't quite happen that way. Or you think, oh, I finally found this thing I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm so energized by this. And then you get a few years in and you're like, I think it's time to make a transition. So the reality is that the more you're living as your authentic self, the more you might actually be at odds with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world isn't living as their authentic selves yet. That's just not the experience that the majority of people are having for whatever reason. So just because you have discovered something that's really real and true for you doesn't mean that it will land perfectly in the outside world right away. We're going to be going through so many changes in the next few decades, and you might be a little bit ahead of the curve of other people with certain things. You might not be understood immediately. So it's important to remember that just because you're not seeing exactly the expected result or the desire that you imagined when you made a certain decision doesn't mean that you did the wrong thing. It just could mean that the world hasn't quite caught up to you yet. It's not quite the time, and it doesn't mean that it was a wrong decision. So human design doesn't really promise us anything other than living as our true selves. What does that mean? I mean, it's going to be different for everybody. Is it always a positive thing? No, it's not. Can it be filled with all these really conflicting feelings and grief and fear and negativity sometimes? Absolutely. That has 100% been my path. But it's worth it in the end to give yourself a chance of showing up as your true self, because you'll also experience a lot of things that you would have never thought possible. So for me, it's been a real mixed bag. A lot of challenges, but a lot of experiences and satisfaction and joy and wonder and depth that I never really thought were possible in my life. So yeah, what do you think? Are you a generator or manifesting generator? Do any of these resonate with you? Have you had any unexpected negative experiences on your deconditioning process? Has your deconditioning process been more rocky or more smooth than you expected? I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments below. And thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out all the resources I have for deconditioning at puregenerators.com.